Hey guys, this is Coach Bill with Bill Mabry Online Coaching. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. Hey, let me get my clock going here so I get on time here. So guys, I haven't been on for a few days because I had an issue a week ago Sunday, and this is a story about what happened. And as you can see on the title, it is hospitals versus nutrition, my own personal experience. So I've only got 10 minutes to go through this story. So I'm going to try to make it as briefly as possible. But about a week ago, my wife and I were on a mountain bike ride on a Tuesday, and I decided to show off to her. So I attempted a jump, and I cut it short, went over the handlebars, dislocated my shoulder, and then the impact hit pretty hard on my right side. So when we got home, she went ahead and put my shoulder back in place. A couple days later, which was a Thursday, I think it was, I woke up that morning early, not feeling good, kind of like I was going to get the flu. Friday, it got a little worse, but not bad. But then Saturday, I noticed that I had some pressure or discomfort in my appendix area. I just thought maybe, I pulled a muscle or something. And so on Sunday morning, about 12:05 is when all hell broke loose. I woke up in the morning. I was in excruciating pain right where the appendix area was. Obviously, I figured I had an appendicitis and had to wake Emily up. She rushed me to the hospital. They did emergency surgery on Sunday. A 1-hour surgery ended up taking 3 hours because of complications. And so once I got back in the room after recovery, the surgeon came in and explained what happened. And what I ended up doing was I had a torn appendix, and I was also seeping in fecal matter into my intestinal areas or in my stomach. And so basically that's what took so long. They had to clean me up and stuff. Well, this is the issue, and this is where the nutrition part of it comes in. The next morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, the nurses come in to check my blood pressure and do my glucose reading. And when they did my glucose reading, it was 177. And the first thing they asked me was, "Are you a diabetic?" And I said, "No." And so they did their thing and they left. About 10 minutes later, 2 more nurses came in, and they brought a syringe. And me, you guys, if you know me, I'm going to ask, what are you putting in there? I want to know exactly what they're giving me, because I know what goes on in doctors' offices and what goes on in hospitals. We're going to give you insulin. I go, what? Wait a minute, guys. No. That's not how it works. First of all, you took my glucose at 6 in the morning, and those of us that do take our glucose or a type 2 diabetic know what the dawn effect is. It's your body's natural way of getting you ready for the day. So in the morning when you do your glucose reading, you're always going to have a higher glucose level. That's just how your body works. That's the physiology of the body. But the other thing I explained, I said, ladies, you have to understand how the body works when it comes to trauma. So I got out of surgery at about 12 o'clock the night before. My body is under trauma, major trauma. So what does that mean? It's under stress, right? So what is the stress hormone called? Cortisol. What does cortisol do? It spikes. When cortisol spikes, what happens to your glucose level? It goes up. It spikes also. Now, I hadn't eaten for probably 48 hours prior to going to the hospital, so obviously I was running on the fat in my body, but you have a natural mechanism to protect you to make sure you have enough glucose. And I told him, I said, now you got to think about this, ladies. I was under trauma. I'm in stress. My body needs energy to heal itself. So it's going to spike, it's going to use a natural mechanism known as gluconeogenesis to raise my glucose as high as it needs to so we can use it for energy. That's why it was 177. Give it an hour. I guarantee you, watch what happens in an hour. I opt out of it. No insulin. Do not put that in my body. Well, they came back. And they came back an hour later. And my blood glucose level now has dropped down to 129. And I said, now come back an hour later, let's see what happens. They came back an hour later. Well, they were doing my glucose readings every day for a week, 3 times a day. And so it went from 129 and then dropped down to 102, then it dropped down to 90, and it hovered there most of the time because I needed it. And I told him, I said, your brain, you know, when your body's under stress, your body is naturally going to need the energy to heal whatever trauma you went through. So I got to educate those ladies because they didn't know, they had no idea. Well, the other thing is the doctor came in that morning and I had no intestinal sounds, and that's a concern of theirs because of my intestines going through so much trauma. They want to hear something. Well, they brought me food. They told me I had to be on liquid food. You know what they brought? They brought me? They brought me a container of grape juice, a container of apple juice, a container of orange juice, and a broth that tasted so salty it made me gag, and they expected me to eat that. Now think about this. They're taking my blood glucose readings 3 times a day. All 3 meals had high refined sugar. How in the world are these people supposed to drop their glucose levels down to normal when they're giving you 3 meals a day that are highly processed refined sugar meals? And so I was telling the nurses, I said, you guys got this thing all wrong. I had no problem telling them. Well, then the nutritionist came in and I told him, I said, dude, I can't eat this stuff. It's too high sugar. And furthermore, I had my wife bringing me my homemade kefir, which is one of the most powerful probiotics and with lots of good minerals and B vitamins in it. I had her bring me that the next morning to drink so that when the doctor came in, he could hear the noises, and that's exactly what happened. After she brought it, I drank it, and then an hour later he came in. The first thing he did was stick his stethoscope, and even before he could get it to my stomach, he popped up and said, well, that's really good. You got some really great sound. So that's how I was able to get my gut working again, because I knew it. I knew I had to get it working because of the trauma that it went through. But I had a great 5 days. I guess I was kept in there for 5 days. Talked to a lot of the nurses there that had questions. Even got talking to a surgeon who was very fascinated in intermittent fasting. By the way, he was in great shape. He ate pretty clean. But he does want to incorporate intermittent fasting because he's been following the science and seeing how powerful it is, not just for losing body fat or belly fat or weight, but for overall health. And he wanted to get involved in it and wanted to know more about it. So I was able to have a great conversation. But going back to the nutritionist, I did tell him that he's got this all wrong. You guys are doing glucose readings 3 times a day on all these patients, but you're feeding them high processed sugar, refined sugar 3 times a day. So how are you going to be able to get their glucose levels down to normal? You're not. So guys, that was my experience on what I went through last week and how hospitals have it all wrong. I've got 41 seconds, so let's shut this off. You guys have a great day. Bye.